Hey, I shaved my mustache. More like the barber shaved the mustache, but whatever. Album review! And yeah, that is two intros mixed together because Review Bra, aka the report of the week, had infamously reviewed this album for no whatever reason whatsoever. And this is Jack White's Boarding House Reach. So yeah, I have a lot to say about this album. Oh my gosh, what the heck is this album? What the heck? This is one of the hardest albums to get into because this is one of the most challenging albums that I've ever listened to in 2018. And probably the most challenging. Yeah. So yeah, Jack White, singer-songwriter, one half of the legendary rock band, the White Stripes, and just a cool guy. Also a very weird and eccentric guy because on this album he just goes completely insane. And also he is specialized in blues rock and garage rock, and yeah, previously, like after he had departed from the White Stripes, he had released 2 solo studio albums, Blunderbuss and Lazaretto, and both are decent, okay albums that aren't that impressive or anything, but this one, I don't even know where to start. This album is super aggressive and hard-hitting, but also extremely experimental, off-the-wall, wacky, and insane, and it melds all the genres of funk, electronic, rock, even rap on the track Ice Station Zebra. And yeah, this album features all of these noisy, glitchy, abrasive sounds, but also groovy, ragged sound effects. And yeah, it is one of the most dynamic and versatile and colorful albums of the year so far, but also in a strange and unorthodox way that is really hard to get into. So the album started off with Connected by Love, which I didn't like at first. I didn't like that much. It wasn't the worst track. I put it in the meh tracks because it's just eh. 'Cause I know we're connected by love. Yes, I know. There are these cycling, fuzzy bass lines with these simple, slow kick drums that started the song off. And then Jack White goes in with these very nerve-wracking vocals. And I actually kind of like the lyrics to this song. It kind of, talks about technology and how you're actually connected by love, like computer kind of connected. And the verses are actually kind of mediocre, though. They aren't that impressive. There's nothing too crazy or powerful about the verses, but the choruses, they are super grand and bold, and this is just what I did not expect from Jack White at all. The second track is Why Walk a Dog, with these still sequence drums, not still, stiff. I wrote L instead of F on here. Wow, I'm good at English.
Why does a dog need to be walked? 3 birds fighting out in the yard.
Stiff sequence drums that are actually kind of boring, and the chords and the vocals are really downtrodden and chilling, with these strange, ominous lyrics about treating a person as if he or she is an object. It doesn't necessarily relate to a romantic relationship. It can be any relationship, and it means that the relationship is just not as fine and as fair as it seems. And I kind of like the watery, trippy, psychedelic synths on this track, but overall this track is kind of bland, it's kind of run-of-the-mill, and this track is also really short. And yeah, I kind of wish for more on this track, so eh. And then we have Corporation, which sounds totally different from the previous two tracks. This is a really groovy, funky, electronic rock song that mixes electronic music and rock music really well together, but it's more rock than electronic. And yeah, this song is super nasty, fun, with these weird, shouty refrains. Who's with me? And yeah, it's super funny. It's it has a lot of personality to it, and Jack White kind of talks about having a corporation, having a company, owning something, ownership, and overall it's a really fun song that I actually enjoy. The fourth track, oh wow, I don't know if this is supposed to be an interlude or whatever the hell is this, but this is basically a Boolean and Equation, and this is a super poetic and theatrical and dramatic track with these sad, tragic violins and Jack White just speaking in a very dramatic and tragic, almost Shakespearean manner. Like, what the fuck? But it's not that bad of a track though. I mean, I'm just baffled. And then the fifth track is Hyper Misophoniac, with these weird sound effects at the beginning, these bottle shaking pills, you know. And this is a super weird, funky track that sounds like a sillier and dumber version of Pink Floyd's Any Colors You Like off their classic Dark Side of the Moon. But at the same time, this track is also super impressive with all sorts of instrumentals, just layers upon layers, melding and welding into one another. And but still, on this track, it kind of feels like Jack White had gone a little bit too overboard with these up and down. You know, I have to impersonate it. I don't even know how to describe it. It feels almost as if this song is a little bit moronic and the vocals are super twisted and distorted. I just don't know what the hell's going on. Another track that that gives me the big wow. And then the next track is Ice Station Zebra.
Hear me out, it ain't easy, but I'll try to explain. Everything in the world gets labeled and named. The box, a rough definition, unavoidable. Who picked the label doesn't want to be responsible. Truth, you're the warden, is the keys to the prison. You create your own box, you don't have to listen to any other label makers putting your obituary.
Another track that totally defies all my expectations of Jack White, because this track is actually a rap track. Jack White is actually rapping on this track with this groovy, garagey rock background music, and I really like the instrumental of this track. I really love it. In fact, I just listened to it in the morning when I was going to school on a bus, and wow, this is super driving, super groovy, fun, nasty, with these repetitive thuddy drums and these jumpy, bouncy pianos. And Jack White kind of raps in a very cartoony and silly way that's actually fun, almost like he's taking the influences from Beck, from the old Beck, the old Odelay Mutations Beck. And damn, the next track is Over and Over. I
think therefore I die. Anxiety and night, rolling down a mountain. Over and over. My shoulder holds the weight of the world.
And yeah, this is one of the best tracks of the year so far, in my opinion, because the groove is banger and the vocals are super freaking awesome, and the production is amazing. It's quality production. I love the ragged guitars and the jumpy drums and the backup vocals are really weird and distorted once again, over and over, over and over. And this song almost feels like it has a hip-hop instrumental, which is super interesting because it feels like there are all these drum and horn breaks in the middle of the track that doesn't ruin the track, but it just shocks me. And yeah, overall, super fun, catchy track. Probably the most accessible track on this entire album. And there's that. And then we have another interlude thing. Everything You've Learned. It has this weird dystopian satire flavor to this track that I cannot decrypt whatsoever. It's super dramatic. It sounds like a commercial. And we have these weird guitar chops, especially towards the end of the track, where there's a crescendo, kind of. Again, I have no idea what the hell is this. And then the next track is Respect Commander. After the crazy, chaotic, off the beat and path interlude, we have a more steady Respect Commander with the very steady and stiff drum kick, not kick drum, but just, yeah, it's kick drum. I don't know what kind of drum it is actually. Just very stiff and steady drums at the back, but with these speedy drum beats accompanied with guitars. Like, there are two layers of drum beats. One of them is super slow and stiff and steady. One of them is super speedy. And these synths are just lingering and fun, and they're just, you know, electrocuting almost. And then after that little instrumental section, the song breaks into this slow, heavy, and almost dark section where Jack White's talking about respecting women and that woman commanding respect. She has all my respect. And it's just really ominous and strange. And then towards the end, the last 30 seconds of the track, it resumes back to that crazy, speedy, fun instrumental that was earlier on the track. And I really love this track. This is my second favorite track on the album. And then up next is what's the next track? Oh, Esmeralda Steals the Show. Another track that gives me the big what the fuck. And it is basically this sweet, strangely and oddly sweet guitar acoustic piece where Jack White speaks in a very dramatic way as if he's possessed by some weird spirit, and it's super ominous. The delivery is super ominous and strange and unsettling and disturbing. And it cracked me up when I was listening to this track. It cracked me up at how I don't have words to describe this, not at all. And then we have Get in the Mineshaft, which has this dark, moody spoken word passage at first about how Jack White goes into this house and he saw this piano, but he doesn't know how to play piano, so he just randomly struck 3 notes, and then suddenly this song breaks into a funky, psychedelic, weird instrumental thing, much like Hypermesophoniac, which is similar to Pink Floyd's Any Colors You Like, except it's even sillier, even dumber, but it's also more groovier and stranger. I'm actually kind of impressed by this track. Not that it's great or anything. There are underwhelming things about this track, but overall, I'm okay with it. And then, what's the next track? The next track is all the way up there. What's Done is Done. What? Well, what is even going on this track? And suddenly, Jack White goes into this very sweet, smooth vocalist with another woman just singing duet with him with a really nice harmony, I guess. And this track is basically a sweet country folk ballad that doesn't sound quite right. It sounds a little bit off, and it sounds really like Justin Timberlake's latest album, Man of the Woods, but except the tune is way more tasteful, the instrumentals are way less ridiculous, it's a little bit more minimalistic, it's a little bit more safe, but at the same time, the whole track feels super adventurous. And the instrumentals accompany with each other really well. The synths and the electronic soundscapes are super intoxicating. Just byoon.
What's done is done. I just can't fight it no more. So I'm walking downtown to the store, and I'm buying a gun.
You know, and I'm not a huge fan of this track. Again, it feels a little bit underwritten and underwhelming in terms of the melody, but then it's also actually kind of good. I have no idea. And then the last track is Humoresque, which has this classical music vibe, but then it's totally not a classical music piece from Jack White. In fact, it's actually a lullaby from Jack White. It is a smooth, soothing, sleepy, guitar-driven lullaby that actually sounds good. It actually sounds like a very dreamy, nostalgic, almost nostalgic folk track that just ends off the album in an unsettling way that also feels kind of justifying at the same time, if you know what I mean. So yeah, that's... I still have no idea what the hell's going on this album, by the way. This album is the most unpredictable Jack White album ever, and one of the most unpredictable rock albums of the decade. Hell, even in the 21st century so far. And it's just whack and insane. There are a lot of experimental moments of this album that just bends and twists my mind. There are a lot of unorthodox and eccentric moments on this album. But yeah, this album is also full of creative textures and colors, and it's really dynamic, very versatile, and it's super challenging. A super challenging album to listen to. The first time I listened to it, I actually don't quite like it. It's kind of a strong 6, decent 7. It's really hard to make heads or tails on this album, but overall there are also a couple of catchy, groovy, fun, nasty, noisy tracks on this album. And this album, it feels like a loose collection of weird tracks and ideas from Jack White, but at the same time it also feels kinda coherent for no reason. And on this album, Jack White rebels against the modern rock stereotypes and tries to use new and more refreshing ways to kind of revive the rock genre a little bit. But still, what? And by the way, it's friggin' Jack White. He's famous. So the Grammys, you must nominate this guy next year. Please, you must. You fucking must. And again, it's so hard to make heads or tails on this album. You know, like, at the same time, this album sounds like a really dumb, silly, toothless, composition of weird tracks that doesn't quite satisfy you, and it sounds like a strong 6, but then at the same time, it sounds like it's super colorful, super fun, it's super genius with all these layers of instrumentals, and it's just the most genius thing Jack White had ever done, and it sounds like a strong 9. So I'm just gonna settle in the middle. I hope that this album's gonna end up in my top 20 albums of the year. But yeah, it's a decent 8 for me, aka an 8 for me, 8.3 specifically. Yeah, don't ask why. The worst track is Why Walk a Dog. I don't like that track. I just don't like it. The best is Over and Over and Over. I love that music video as well, by the way. And yeah, it's an 8 out of 10. So have you listened to Jack White's Boarding House Reach? Jeez! From 1 to 10, how much would you rate it? Like if you like it, hate if you hate it, and subscribe if you want more.